Renunciar a la revolución, renunciar al socialismo.
Viva la Revolución, or Long Live the Revolution, is a rallying cry often associated with Fidel Castro's long fight against American imperialism. I sat down with Ohlone College's Associate Professor of History, Dr. Kyle Livy, to learn more about the dynamic dictator that Dr. Livy described as complicated.
So he was simultaneously both a figure that rejected and inspired this rejection of Western intervention and American intervention in Latin America, which was very commonplace. But he also kind of appropriated a lot of the persona and style of Latin American dictators who were very much built into that sense of dependency on the West.
Given the tumultuous relationship between the US and Cuba since Castro assumed power in 1959, some may wonder why anyone ever saw him as a hero.
Under Castro, Cuba developed a social welfare state that provided for the Cuban people in a way that is, thinking about life expectancy in Cuba, it's unrivaled in Latin America. There's all of these things that happened that I think there are some even in the United States that looked and said, why can't we accomplish this if we're such a wealthy nation, if such a poor nation can do this?
Dr. Livy further explained it's complicated to talk about positives and negatives under Castro's regime because some of the dictator's achievements were born out of his rigorous control of the nation and Cuban people.
He was a brutal dictator who suppressed opposition through violence, through intimidation, by jailing thousands of people who opposed him. Over Castro's rule, over 1 million people fled Cuba.
During Cuba's official 9 days of mourning following Castro's death, the U.S. Embassy in Havana did not lower its flag to half-staff, while the Cuban Embassy in Washington, D.C. did. So what does the former dictator's death mean for U.S. and Cuban relations going forward?
At least in the short term, that not as much will change even with the Trump administration in terms of our relationship with Cuba, because we have not taken some of the major steps of liberalization, including a full end to the embargo.
So ultimately, what does Fidel Castro's death mean within the larger context?
This moment is so important historically and so important in terms of symbolism, thinking about a potential transition, but not a whole lot has changed with his death. What will start to change, I think, is when Raul Castro leaves office. That's where we're going to see the potential for greater change in Cuba.
On the Ohlone campus in Fremont, I'm Eileen Street for Ohlone Network News.